Good evening, everyone. Welcome to I Care and You webinar 18, an introduction to audio description. My name is Sylvia. I am a campaigns and engagement intern at Thomas Pocklington Trust. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our guest speaker and we're going to learn more about audio description.
Yep, my name's Johnny. I work in the RNIB's Media Culture and Immersive Technologies team. So our team kind of focuses on projects to do with audio description as one of the main elements we work on. So we work with broadcasters and streaming services on that, but we also work with museums and cinemas and on their sort of guided audio described tours, but that's a bit of a smaller bit of our work. And then we've also started doing some work on accessibility in video games, and audio description kind of cuts across all of them, and it's growing more into certain areas, and we will cover some of that later on in the talk.
Messenger. Type a message. Send a message.
So the first thing I wanted to discuss is what is audio description. So audio description, which is also commonly referred to as AD, is an additional commentary track. So it usually provides information about facial expressions, the setting and scene. So that could be what's in the background, or it could be describing an action scene. And this is all done through audio. So in a traditional audio description, you would have the main commentary from the program, and then when there's a gap, audio description would come in, so that would be a separate voice speaking, and that would be providing you with the additional commentary and information to help you follow the program. Now, at this point, I want to play you two clips. So if we could start with the one without audio description, and I think if you pay attention and think about how well you can comprehend this audio clip without the audio description, and then after that we'll play one that has audio description, and just think about how it makes you feel and how easy it is to comprehend between the two. So if you'd like to play the clip, John, please. Okay, so that was the first clip, which didn't have any audio description, and as you'll have noticed, it was quite hard to follow. So next up, we'll play the clip with audio description, and you can see how it differs.
In a darkened room, a white man sleeps. Next to him are a Native American little boy and woman. Subtitles. It's okay, son. I know you want this to be over. Now, the woman and boy stand on a windy hilltop by a tree. I'm right here. The white man with straggly shoulder-length hair and a beard approaches. I will be right here. The boy stands with his arms wide, dark hair blowing in the wind. The woman smiles. On a snow-dusted hilltop, a shelter is on fire. But you don't give up. You hear me? A soldier with a flaming torch moves away from the fire. The boy sits with his back to it. Later, the man cradles the boy by the destroyed village. As long as you can still grab a breath, you fight. You breathe. Keep breathing. The man stares out across the hilltop as the screen fades to black.
Now, these are two good examples of how audio description can be useful, because as you'll have noticed in the second clip, it was much easier to follow with the descriptions of what the characters look like, and there were some descriptions of the settings and scenes, and also the subtitles were read out, and there was a big contrast between the two, so it's a very, very useful feature. Now, the next important thing to know is where can you access audio description? So all audio description can be accessed on Freeview TV. It can be accessed on Virgin Media, Sky, and most of the other linear broadcasting methods of accessing TV. And the other main place it can be accessed is on online streaming services, and these can be split into two categories, sorry. You've got the broadcaster-led, and these are going to be streaming services such as BBC iPlayer, My5, Channel 4, and ITVX, and they tend to upload their programs afterwards, and you tend to be able to view them for about 30 days after they've been uploaded. And more recently, they have started uploading box sets of TV shows. So I guess there's a bit more of a blurring between the two. And the second category is the online streaming services. So these are more independent ones. So these would be your Disney Pluses, Amazon Primes, and Netflix. And when you subscribe to those, you get access to their whole category of programs. Audio description can also be accessed at other venues. So this includes cinemas, which I mentioned earlier, and in museums. And also you can get it in football stadiums with the headsets. And more recently, we've started having audio description added into video games. So that includes both trailers. So I think the most recent example I can think of, it's not strictly a video game trailer, but it's from Xbox, and it's on YouTube, and it's when Activision Blizzard King joined them, and they created a little trailer for that, and that is audio described on YouTube. And then within video games, you've got some audio descriptions for cutscenes, and there is audio descriptions in the new Mortal Kombat game. And hopefully in the updates for the brand new Spider-Man game, audio descriptions will be added to it there. So that is a bit of a growing area of video games for audio description, and hopefully in the coming years, more developers and studios add that to their games to make them more accessible for people. Now that we know where you can find audio description, it's important to know how you can access it. So audio description can be accessed on a Freeview TV by pressing an audio description button on your remote. However, it is worth noting that not all remotes have the button, and all TVs are slightly different, so the way you access it may differ depending on which device you have. You can also have audio description on the online platforms that I was mentioning earlier, and these can tend to be accessed by going to either the languages menu, which you could navigate to with a screen reader or VoiceOver, or whichever screen reader device you're using, and toggling is on in the menu. And there may be a few different options for the audio description depending on the platform you're using, but it will usually be found in that menu. It is worth noting that depending on which platform you're using, it may differ. So Netflix and YouTube are very similar, but Channel 4's one is slightly different to access, but most of these streaming platforms have audio description available. There are also some other notable features which may be useful. On some Freeview TVs, you're able to control the audio description volume level, and this might be a useful feature to know about if the program mix isn't quite right. So sometimes the program's audio will be too loud and the audio description is drowned out. So on some Freeview TVs, you can increase or decrease the volume depending on what's required. And there are some other accessibility features for accessing TVs. So with some TV remotes, you are able to speak to them and say things such as search for a certain program, and it can look that up for you. And some TVs which are Alexa enabled, you can search via Alexa. So those are some other useful features to know about for accessing TVs. There is also, some have text to speech built into them, so you can use that to navigate some other menus. However, they're not always integrated with some of the streaming services online, but again, that varies depending on which TV you're using and how it's been developed. So that kind of gives you an overview of what audio description is, where you can find it and how you can access it. I thought it would also be useful to talk a bit about the state of audio description in the UK at the moment. So I would say that audio description is in a fairly healthy state in the UK, with broadcasters required to provide audio description on 10% of their content. Currently, the public service broadcasters have voluntarily committed to audio describing 20% of their content. And currently, they're broadcasting at a higher rate than that, and it sits around 26% currently. In the UK last year, we had over 250,000 hours of audio description on the telly, and that was on around 80 to 85% of the channels. It is also worth noting that some channels are exempt from providing audio description, and that is because they either haven't been licensed for 3 years or they are only broadcasting to less than 0.5% of the viewership. There are a few other exemptions, and these tend to be for news channels where audio description isn't necessarily suitable for the content. In terms of the online streaming platforms, Netflix has around 30% of its content with audio description, and that is across a range of different genres. So it's a very healthy amount of audio description in the UK, but of course there can always be more. I thought it would also be interesting to touch on in this section about how audio description is decided, so which programs it's decided to be on. And a notable example of this would be sort of Netflix. Their decision process tends to be around content they think will be popular, and generally this tends to work reasonably well, but it does mean that occasionally some programs miss having audio description from the start. So one prime example of this from a few years ago was with Squid Game, and that was quite a popular series in the UK, but because Netflix didn't think it would be, audio description wasn't added when it was first released, and this meant that some blind and partially sighted people missed out on some of the buzz or initial buzz around the program, but it was rectified and was added later on. Yeah, so I was gonna say next about what is the RNIB working on to improve audio description in the United Kingdom. So we work with a number of different stakeholders. These include audio description providers, the broadcasters, streaming platforms, and the government and regulators. So that would be the Department for Digital, Culture, Media and Sport, and Ofcom are the regulators we work with. So we have regular meetings with broadcasters, so that would be Channel 4, ITV, the BBC, and we discuss upcoming topics. So recently this year we were discussing the coronation, the live audio description that was provided on the coronation this year. We discussed that with ITV, and we would also discuss the enhanced commentary on the BBC. So these are very useful meetings, so we can discuss any issues and think about any changes. So with ITVX, they've been keeping us updated with the new ITVX app, and as it's been rolled out across the different platforms, when it will be accessible on which platforms, and they also have their user testing group which feeds into that. So it's useful to keep abreast of the changes by speaking to the broadcasters on a regular basis. We also speak to Ofcom. So Ofcom are the regulator for the broadcasters in the UK, and their power is derived from legislation, and they work closely with the Department for Digital, Culture, Media and Sport. So we respond to their consultations, and they tend to be addressing major changes or big issues. So in some of the recent ones we've responded to include on the rights for the FIFA World Cup and the changes to the BBC operating license. So this gives us a chance to represent blind and partially sighted views to the regulator and ensure that they're taking into consideration any legal requirements and making sure that blind and partially sighted people's voices are heard. In addition, this year we've been talking to the Department for Digital, Media, Culture and Sport about video on demand streaming services, because currently in the United Kingdom there's no legal requirement for audio description to be on these platforms, but that is something we've been working with to create legislation for, to hopefully change this in the future, and that would be a really positive step. And the kind of other main areas we work on include research projects. So these tend to be in the form of focus groups, and the research topic areas have come out of a project that was held a couple of years ago. And that was focusing on looking at how much audio description was being provided in the UK and looking at which content didn't have audio description and trying to figure out why. So lots of the focus groups we've run this year have been looking at programs that might not necessarily suit traditional audio descriptions. So some of the areas we've looked at include sport, music, and documentaries. So I'll just give you a bit of an overview of the research we've done. So in the area of sports, we have looked at thinking about how audio description could be applied to live broadcastings of sporting events. So for instance, we tested out different audio description styles. So we've had an enhanced commentary, which is where you'd have just the two normal commentators for a sporting event, but they try to be more descriptive. We've had a specially produced audio description track. So in that case, it's similar-ish to a radio commentary. You just have one person presenting and providing a very detailed analysis of what was happening within the event. And then we've also tried a traditional audio description. So you'd have the main commentators and then somebody filling in the gaps. So from that research, I would say the favorite was probably the specially produced audio description track, because people found they had the most detail from it, and it also felt that it would work well for a shared experience, because sports are quite often viewed with family members. And quite a lot of participants in that research pointed out that with the traditional audio description, there were quite a lot of sort of overlap. So sometimes you'd have the main commentators speaking over the audio describer, or vice versa. So you were either missing out on what was happening, or the audio describer was backfilling, and it kind of worked as an experience for people, but it probably wasn't the best option necessarily. However, it is more common in the USA for it to be done that way, and with more practice it could work better. And then for the music, that again was focusing on live events. So it was looking at sort of how live events could be on TV, could be broadcasted with audio description. And again, there are different ways that could be done. And also within this research, it looked at music videos. So some of the different styles that were looked at were there's the kind of one where it's more integrated into the music video, and there's quite a famous example on YouTube where Stevie Wonder is singing the sort of audio description is wrapped in the background, and there are kind of mixed feelings on whether that's the best way to do it. Some people seem to prefer a traditional audio description to be applied to music videos again, but some people preferred an alternative approach. So quite a lot of the sort of information in that project came down to personal preference, but it's still interesting to find out what people thought of the different approaches. And recently we've been looking at cinemas. So in the last few weeks we ran a focus group on people's accessibility and the experience at cinemas, and from this we found out that people's experiences differ from chain to chain, and this includes from the equipment used. So at different chains there was some experiences where the equipment wasn't charged or wasn't ready to be used, whereas at other chains the staff were much more prepared. So kind of from that it's looking at where sort of training could be implemented to help staff understand how to implement audio description and maintain the headsets appropriately. And there were kind of some longer term aspirations that participants in the focus group wanted, and they're thinking about how the audio description systems could be upgraded to be more modern, as currently if you go to the cinema there's the potential that the signal may not reach where you're sitting, or it could cut out. So it's thinking about alternative solutions such as potentially using apps or Bluetooth devices, and that would allow you to use your own personal device in the cinema. I think the sort of apps is quite an interesting one because the RNIB was also involved in some research a few years ago where they were testing out a range of apps, and essentially they work by listening to the sounds in the film, and that will sync it to the audio description on your phone, for instance, through the app. So you can have your own personal device and use it. And that is also being tested out in different countries at the moment. I think it's being tested in Brazil currently. So it's an interesting area to keep an eye on and see what happens, and potentially think about revisiting it in the future. And those are the kind of main areas we've been looking at this year. So it's all very interesting in that sense, lots of research. And that kind of brings me to the end of the main part of the presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Johnny. That was really interesting as well to hear about all the different projects and all the different entities you've engaged in, sort of highlighting and planning a future where there's audio description for pretty much everything. Soon, everything will be accessible for all of us, the arts and entertainment. So I'm going to let you know about the next month's webinar. Next month, we will be having the London Fire Brigade talking to us about staying safe in your home. This is, the festive season. There'll be lots of candles, lots of fairy lights. So they'll be letting us know how we can have our festive lights and enjoy ourselves and stay safe. Thank you so much for tuning in tonight, and we look forward to seeing you next month.